The reason we're really here is to try to help educate you and elevate your business, right? And so to do that, we talk about various different topics. Our first speaker is Adam Peters. And he's going to talk about he called this From Friction to Flow, building a positive workplace culture that lasts. And I don't know exactly what he's going to talk about. I've got some ideas based on that title. But I will say, if you've ever been around someone who's positive versus someone who's negative, there's a giant difference. If you're around someone who's positive, you want to buy their products, you want to buy their services. If you're around someone who's negative, you don't. Again, business is about people. It's about relationships. That's what business really is. We learn things we learn marketing, we learn finance, we learn all this stuff about business. But what it boils down to is people. And so I'm really excited to hear about how a positive culture can change things and how you can build that in your workplace. So let's welcome Adam Peters on up here.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Doug. What a great preamble to this topic. I am Adam Peters. It is lovely to be here. It's lovely to see all of your faces. And I'm here to talk about positive culture, which is near and dear to my heart because I genuinely believe when we are more positive, a lot of things get better. Before we dive in, though, I do have a baseline exercise I would like you to engage with. So on page 1 of your positive culture handout, you should have that in front of you. There's 3 lines, and I invite you to record 3 thoughts that have been kicking around in your head this morning. Just 3 things that you've been thinking about, 3 things that's been on your mind. You can write a keyword or a phrase. You don't have to write the whole thought, but just jot down 3 things that has been on your mind this morning. I'll give you about 60 seconds to do that. And as I'm talking and you think of more stuff, you might be able to jot that down. It's never too late. All right. Good stuff. I'm a show, don't tell kind of person, and that'll come in handy as we get a little bit further in this talk. Once upon a time, I was a very miserable person. And that didn't make any sense. I had a good job, I had a roof over my head, I live in paradise. So I had to start deconstructing why so miserable. And that led me to neuroscience because I started to think the problem might be me. The problem might be in my head. And it turns out I was right. In pursuing neuroscience, I learned about negativity bias, which is something that we all suffer from because it is inherited. It's a survival instinct that has kept us safe for thousands of years. And essentially what it means is that we give more of a preference to things going wrong in our day than what's going right. So if you have 5 great things going for you and just one bad thing happens, you're going to bed thinking about that one bad thing. And it's normal and natural, so it's hard to spot when it's happening. And it can show up in really damaging ways, especially in the workplace. So on the workbook here, you can see the number 2 item is negativity bias. So we create positive culture by addressing negativity bias. Every single person in your organization contributes to the culture, for better or worse. So we build positive culture one mindset at a time by addressing this negativity bias. And again, I'm not alone. This is something that we all struggle with. A study has shown that about the average person has 1 positive thought for every 3 negative thoughts that we think. So jump back up to those 3 things that have been kicking around in your head this morning. How many of them are positive? How many of them are negative? How many of them are neutral? That's just for you to kind of get a sense of where you're at right now. If you have more negative than positive, give yourself grace. It's part of our natural thinking process to pay attention to the threats, the danger in our space. Now the challenge is, in the modern world, we have negativity on tap. I just got to take my pocket computer out of my pocket and start scrolling, and I have unlimited negativity because you may or may not have known about negativity bias, but the newsroom knows about it, advertisers know about it, TV executives know about it, and they purposely put that in front of you to capture your attention, and it usually works. And this happens in the workplace too. When we have negative interactions with each other, we make negative assumptions about why that might be the case, and oftentimes those assumptions are off track. But before we dive even more into negativity bias, let's talk about the benefits of adopting a preference for positivity, because that's what I teach people to do in order to build positive culture. There are 3 major benefits to adopting a positive mindset. One is that it makes you a better problem solver. When we're in a negative headspace, we have very limited resources to call on. But when we're in a positive headspace, we have a higher elevation, we're able to see further, we have access to the rational parts of our brain. That makes us a good problem solver. Does anybody here encounter problems on a daily basis? Does anybody here have employees that report to them? Are you a business owner? And they probably have problems that they encounter too. Do you want them to be a good problem solver so they can adeptly handle those things and not have to come to you or escalate or create an even bigger problem because they're working from a place of negativity or fear? So yeah, positivity gives us that superpower of problem solving. Number 2, it makes us stronger in the relationship department. Because when we are making assumptions about people and we have a negativity bias, we're filling in the blank with something negative. When we have that preference for positivity, we're filling in the blank with something positive. When we are, from a healthy, positive standpoint, when we're approaching our relationships, we're doing it from a place of security versus insecurity, which is usually what holds relationships back. I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to show a side of me that might not be as attractive as I think other people want. We're making those assumptions. So it creates stronger relationships when we're meeting the moment in a positive place. And then it creates less stress-related downtime. So from a neuroscience perspective, our brains go into survival mode. They go into hypervigilance when we're in negative headspace. That means the natural healing process that we're supposed to undergo every single day gets paused. And that adds up over time. And that's where cumulative stress results in stress-related PTO, mental health days, physical illness. So coming at things from a positive perspective gives you that extra boost to your health. And I think we could all appreciate a little of that. So when you move on to the next page, I have the 4 different stress or fear responses that typically happen when we're in a negative headspace. The most common that people know about is fight and flight, right? Does anyone know what the other 2 are? Any guesses? I see Eric.
Freeze and fawn?
Freeze and fawn, yes sir, A+. So fawn is all about people pleasing. It means compromising your boundaries to make someone else comfortable to de-escalate a situation. It means that you're giving more than you should when you fawn and you appease and you're not really helping the situation. But it's a survival response. If it works for you to survive, you're going to keep doing it. And then freeze is, I'm not even going to answer this email. It scares me. I'm just locking up. I'm not making decisions. And indecision is a huge productivity killer when we're not able to move forward, not able to take action. So we don't want to be aggressive and fight when we're having a negative response. We certainly don't want to run away, which is what flight is. So these are the 4 options. So as an entrepreneur, as an employer, as a business owner, you probably do not want to approach your customers, your employees, your vendors with one of these 4 approaches. That's not going to be the best route for you to be successful. So now that we know about negativity bias, that's kind of half the battle. Because like I said, it's natural. We all do it. So now we need to understand when it's happening in our lives. So if it's natural, how do we do that? Well, the brain has a way to speak to us. The subconscious speaks to us physiologically through our bodies. So on page 2, there's also a list of physiological responses that correlate to the fear response and to negativity. For me, I am a muscle clencher. So when my shoulders are at my ears and I'm clenching my fist, that's an indicator to me something has triggered me. I don't feel safe, something negative is happening, I'm not liking what's going on. And that's a cue for me to start getting curious. Well, what's causing this? It could be I'm just driving and maybe I'm thinking about something, maybe I'm catastrophizing about something in the future, maybe I'm thinking about a negative interaction I had with somebody. That is my cue to start paying attention. So I invite you to take a look at this list and circle anything that you see in yourself, because this is an important part of building a preference for positivity, is knowing when you've been triggered. So you'll know what these are, and the beauty of circling these things is you are activating your attention network. So the part of your brain that you say you want to buy a new red car, and now all of a sudden you see red cars everywhere, that's not miraculous as much as it feels like it. That's your attention network tuning into the fact that you care about red cars now. So it's giving you all that information because there's so much stimuli happening at any given time, our brains can't handle it all. So our subconscious decides what to feed us based on how we tell it we want to live our lives. So by circling the physiological responses that you recognize in yourself, now over the next 48 hours to the next week, you're gonna be more aware of when you have been triggered, which is great news because you can't fix something if you don't know that it's broken, right? And if there's not one listed and you know for sure that there's one in here that's not listed, feel free to write it in. One that I've been doing recently, and I'm still deconstructing it, is I hold my thumb. Just a very anxious thumb holder, and if I look down and I see I'm holding my thumb, I'm like, oh, something's going on, something's bothering me, I'm anxious about something. So knowing that stuff about yourself is super helpful. Now on page 3, there is a summary of the process that I use to go from miserable and unhappy and feeling very much like I haven't achieved or done enough in my life to feel happy, to feeling incredibly accomplished and very happy and with strong relationships, better problem solving. This is the process that I use to get there. 6 steps. We've already talked a little bit about training yourself to notice. That's the emotional piece. That is when you have those physiological responses. There's other ways. So when you start mind reading, oh, they must think. Oh, I bet this is going on. When you start filling in the blank, that's also an indicator that you might be using that negativity bias to tell the worst story. But I want to talk about the 5th step, which is really the bread and butter. Every step before the 5th step is really like setting you up for success for that 5th step to be as successful as possible. So the 5th step is to reframe, or another way to think about this is to tell yourself a better story. We live our lives through narratives. We tell stories all the time about what's happening in our lives, what our role is to play, what other people's roles are. So what I'm asking you to do here is build a narrative that's a positive narrative. And to avoid that dreaded toxic positivity, a story that's positive needs 3 components to be successful. Of course, the number 1 component is that it should be something positive, something in a better light than what you're dealing with right now. But also it needs to be reality-based, because that is where we get into toxic positivity. If you're just pretending like everything is okay, that's not really going to get us where we want to be with positive culture. It needs to be bumped up against a reality. And then it needs to be actionable. Actionable is how we feel like we're in control of something. It gives us that feeling of agency. And actionable doesn't have to be some grandiose thing. You get in your car and you drive somewhere and you take this big action, or you go to some event and you change your whole life. It can be as simple as smiling. So one of my favorite mantras that gets me through some really hard stuff is, if the outcome will stay the same no matter what I do, I'd rather smile than cry. Rather smile than cry is an action. That's something that I choose to do. It gives me that sense of agency, and it allows me to let go of some expectations. So a great personal example, I got a parking ticket yesterday. Amongst other like wonky things that happened yesterday, the Verizon cell service went down. I was affected by that. But I got my first St. Petersburg parking ticket, and I thought, good. Well, now I'll contribute some revenue to the city, and maybe they'll fill a pothole. I did park in the wrong place. I accept that. That's reality-based. I paid the bill right away, so I didn't get the late fee. And I gave it a positive spin, which is I'm contributing revenue to the city that I love, this paradise that I live in. That's a choice. I could have let that ruin my day, and I made that choice. So telling yourself a better story is so important. And let's talk a little bit about what happens when you don't combine all 3 of these things. So when you have something that is positive and actionable, great. But you might be going in circles because it's not reality-based. It doesn't feel right, it doesn't stick because it's not reality-based. If it's positive and reality-based, then we're lacking agency. Then we don't have that sense of control that's making us feel like we're moving the ball forward. And if it's actionable and reality-based, now we're in danger of negative reinforcement. And I have a sense that everybody in this room has motivated themselves at some point in their lives through negative motivation. A lot of people do it, and do you know what? It works. It does actually work. but you're kind of miserable. Just like I had a successful career, I had a good place to live, but I was still miserable. And I like to give this analogy. Does anybody here watch that show Alone? It's a survival show. One guy. So my dad is into this stuff, and I try to understand him better through sometimes watching the stuff that he likes to watch. And Alone, the premise is they airdrop 20 folks into the wilderness. Season 2 of Alone was the Alaskan wilderness. And whoever survives the longest, using all of their survival skills, gets $500,000 at the end of this rainbow. At the end of season 2, there's 2 finalists, David and Larry. And Larry, big guy, 6'4", he believed that he couldn't do anything extraneous. He needed to conserve his energy, he needed to just sit still, he needed to survive, do the basics, do the minimums, and he was miserable and he complained a lot. He motivated himself very negatively. He'd say and scream stuff like, I can't do this anymore, as he was doing it. And he would motivate himself in that way, and he made it to over 60 days out there. But so did David. David is a completely opposite character to Larry. David was having a good time. He was making furniture for his little hut. He was carving drawings into his walking stick. He was fishing for fun. He had enough food, and he was doing it just because he enjoyed fishing. And by the end of that episode, at the end of that finale, he was telling the camera crew, I could do this longer, as they were telling him he won because Larry finally dropped out. So being negative can get you to the finish line, but it doesn't guarantee that you will be the one coming out on top or that you'll be in a good headspace when you get there. So if you remember nothing else from today's session, remember that every single person contributes to the culture of your company for better or worse. So we change culture, we build positive culture one mindset at a time, building mutual accountability, talking the same language, helping each other see what our physiological cues are, supporting and having each other's back, and building this common understanding that when we're positive, we go further and we go together. So it's been a great pleasure. I don't know if we have questions on this one, but
no time for questions.
Okay.
And that's part of the point.
Great.
It's a teaser. So if you have questions, connect with him and make sure that you're continuing these conversations.
Cheers.
So
Thank you,
very much.
Doug.
All right. That was actually kind of a neat presentation because for those of you who